Stubs. Hey people, welcome to Stubs with Jason, where I discuss movies, music, TV, pretty much all kinds of things on all kinds of screens. Today's main attraction is Gladiator 2, which I'll come back around to shortly. Just a couple of things I want to cover first. I saw Heretic, an A24 production about two young religious women played by Sophie Thatcher and Chloe East, who are drawn into a game of cat and mouse in the house of a strange man played by Hugh Grant. It's directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods, a writer-director pair that wrote the first pair of Quiet Place movies, and Adam Driver's 65. Adam Driver versus the dinosaurs. It's a movie that's kind of fine, except that it was clearly made with the intent of surprise dropping dinosaurs on the audience, but the studio thought they'd help things out by dropping all the mysterious elements in the story in a data dump at the beginning of the movie. So, yeah. Anyway, Heretic, this movie, it's pretty solid. It doesn't go on too long. All the three leads are really great. I'd say it's like a 6.8. Absolutely worth a watch in whatever format you prefer to watch movies in. If you're a theater buff, you won't regret it. And if you're a couch critic, you'll get the full effect of this movie in a dark room at home. So, any time after lunch at this time of year. So, stub away on this one. Although I want to point out, as I've thought about this movie more, I gotta admit, I think Hugh Grant might actually just be acting the same way he did in all those rom-coms. This just might be brilliant editing. I bet if you go back and just added some color grading and added some pauses into movies like Notting Hill or 9 Months, you could make a really sinister movie out of those if you wanted to. Just saying, it's there for somebody if they want to do that. Seriously, though, Hugh Grant is pretty darn good in that movie. So, the next thing I want to cover is titled Music by John Williams. It's a documentary on Disney Plus that they dropped earlier in the month. Gotta say, great information, great look into his process, terrific interviews with just titans of the movie industry. If you know the name John Williams when I say it, you should watch this because you'll learn things you didn't know and probably gain an even deeper appreciation than you already have for this guy. And if you don't know the name John Williams, you should absolutely watch this and be absolutely floored by the amount of music that one man has composed that rings well beyond the halls of cinema. Documentaries are a little hard for me to rate, but I'd give this one an 8.6. It's extremely well put together. I really loved it. I have been watching much of the original content on Disney Plus this year, but the John Williams and Jim Henson docs, absolutely worth the price of at least 1 month subscription. And I'm pretty sure they've got a Beatles documentary they're about to drop here soon. Really looking forward to that. So if you got the plus, check it out. All right, Gladiator 2 time. As implied by its clever title, Gladiator 2 is a sequel to 2000's classic Russell Crowe movie, Gladiator. Both were directed by Ridley Scott. As you guys haven't been shy about taking shots on that guy here. But I will say, I did scroll through his IMDb in preparation of this, and I gotta say, yeah, he's the worst for continuously setting back the Alien franchise. Because he doesn't know when it's time to let go and walk away. But he's definitely made a few good movies. And I'm happy to say that I think Gladiator 2 is one of his good movies. It's a good movie. So the story's fine. It's a little more connected to the original than I thought it would be without, reinventing the wheel. So, if you're interested in it and have avoided the trailers, I'd keep it that way. In the lead role, we have Paul Mescal, a guy I'm not really familiar with, but I think he does a really good job in this movie. It's not like amazing, but he's serviceable. He fills the role. He does fine. Alongside him, we have everybody's internet daddy, Papa Pedro Pascal, who, of course, Yeah, he's great. Alongside of him, we have Denzel Washington playing pretty much the only role Denzel Washington has ever played in his entire life, which is fine, which is good. Denzel's solid. He's all right, And Joseph Quinn. So Eddie from Stranger Things slash the upcoming Human Torch in Fantastic Four. And he was in that Quiet Place day one as well. And he plays a good role. He is very good in his role in this movie too. And all those characters fill this world out pretty well. The movie is, again, it's cast really well. They bring back some people from the original movie. Obviously, Russell Crowe does not come back in this movie. I'll go ahead and spoil that for you now. But the people that they bring back, they use well. And the movie, again, overall, it's, does all right. Does good with all that in the casting. So the whole thing may not be quite as thrilling as the original, but I don't think it ever feels tired or too familiar. Like, this is definitely a good legacy sequel. There's some visuals, you know what I mean? Like, and I think the visual effects, you go into a movie like this, like there is a little bit of like, well, what does it look like? It's got a great look. It holds well to the original. Having recently rewatched the original 2000s Gladiator, it is kind of cool to be able to look back at that recently and go, well, at the end of the 90s, this is what we were able to make. And, the crazy thing is like, I'm sure it took years for them to put those shots together for the original movie. And, I mean, they're fine in the original. When you go back and watch them now, you're like, yeah, that it's serviceable, but it's you can tell there's, it's like, it's a little... And when you go and watch this, I mean, I don't know what the lead-in time or the VFX, runway was for this, but everything looks good. Like, there's great sequences. They're great little battle and action sequences that have a great look, and there's no CG in this movie that jumps out as distracting. They did a good job. It looks pretty darn clean. And when you look at the comparison of how the Coliseum is presented from 25 years ago to now, it is interesting to see how far we've come visually. Not that this is a visual showcase for what we can do in 2024, but more so just a good demonstration of like, well, this is where our baseline should be. Like, this is just solid, getting the job done. It doesn't distract. This should be kind of like the baseline expectation when you watch a movie with a sizable budget at this point. So kudos to it for doing that. So with all that said, just want to get straight to the point before I go into spoilers. Should you see it? I mean, it's pretty good. I went with a handful of people. Everyone definitely enjoyed it. I know at least one of them said they prefer this one over the original. And that was not my teenager son. That was somebody close to my age who said that, which is cool. I love that. That's great. I had an uncle who went with me. He's about 10 years my senior. So with that, when the original Gladiator came out, like, this would have been like, oh my gosh, this is one of the best movies that have ever come out. And I'm not saying he's wrong. I do really enjoy the first Gladiator. This is, as he said, one of his original Gladiator is one of his favorite movies of all time, though. So he came out and said, yeah, he had a good time. He really enjoyed it. So there's weight to that. I think that's great that it lands with, that would be who I would, if I was making this movie, it'd be like, well, I want to attract a new audience, and I also want the people who really enjoyed what I created before to come out with a really good feeling and that they really enjoyed that. So he did do that. So good job, Ridley Scott. You did it for Gladiator. Now, if you could just figure out how to do this with alien movies, maybe we won't be so hard on you all the time. I think this movie is pretty widely accessible. I mean, obviously it's, got some violence that goes on. They're fighting in an arena, right? You know what I mean? So there's enough story wrinkles to keep it from being a copy and paste. And while you might see how some of those wrinkles are going to play out early on in your mind, like it all pays off in a satisfactory way. There is one character who I wish had a little more to do, but I get it. They probably made the right decision in favor for runtime, which this movie isn't short by any stretch. So again, probably the right choice there. So definitely a stub for me. I don't think I can say this is can't miss on a big screen good. Not that there's anything particularly wrong with it. It's absolutely worth a watch. I'd say like a 7.4. But I feel like you could be fine watching this at home. But as a theater buff, I want to go, right? Like, but if you're a couch critic, then just sit at home and watch it, and you will be fine. You will enjoy it and have a good time. Well, I mean, I think you'll enjoy it and have a good time. I think it's worth a watch either way to me. And like the original, I would say there's probably this is worth, like, I would recommend this to most people, just like, I would recommend this to most people, but not like in a manner of like, oh, you gotta go. You can't miss this, right? So anyway, you 100% though, if you enjoyed the original, then you should go. And if you ever have a sense of like, oh, I wish I could have watched this the original on the big screen, then yeah, go and take this in and you'll have a good time. Yeah. So 7.4, it's a stub. So let's take a moment here and then we'll do some spoilers. All right. So spoilers. I don't really want to go into like every single beat of this movie, just kind of discuss some of the things I liked and didn't like that jumped out about it. That this movie kind of like, while it's not a beat for beat recreation of the original movie, it's more so because they've added some extra elements into it. And they're those are the wrinkles that I kind of mentioned before. It starts off, Rome is sieging a city, and a guy, on the losing side of this battle, of this siege, is captured and sold into the gladiator slavery, whatever you want to call that. And then it kind of just builds off from there. And he goes and he fights, and it's, it's a story about revenge. This guy, he saw someone who, took the, issued the command during this battle that resulted in this guy's wife being killed in battle, and that's his motivation, is like, oh, well, I just want to go and get revenge. I want to get to this dude. I'll fight my way through the pits until I get that opportunity, and that's it. And the table is set. So he does that, gets set on that path. Well, later on in the movie, you find out, surprise, surprise, our main character isn't just some nobody. He is the son of Lucilla. She is Joaquin Phoenix's sister in the original movie. Her and Russell Crowe had history at one point in time. Lo and behold, this movie pretty much alludes to, if not telling you directly, while this main character in our new movie is a child from her and Russell Crowe, and a rightful heir to the mantle of Rome, to being Caesar in Rome, which this kid is a character in the original Gladiator. So time has passed. It tells you, I think 15 years or something, somewhere between 10 and 20 years have passed. And that is now on the table. And so now what was a revenge story suddenly gets brought into the politics that are there. And as far as the end of Gladiator 1, Rome was supposed to be given back to the people and made a proper democracy, more or less. And as you're in this movie, you see that hasn't happened. There's twins who are sitting as the rulers, and they're not good dudes, obviously, because, that's, they're just not. So now this turns into, okay, well, I want revenge. Well, now the mom has come and asked the main character, like, do you know who you are? Who are your parents? because she doesn't know for sure because of the time that's passed. But as you kind of go through the motions of the movie, she realizes this gladiator who's fighting is my son. And the son, dramatically rejects that at first and is like, I don't, whatever. Then comes around to it. He ends up fighting and wanting his revenge. This revenge match that he's wanted with this guy who issued this command, this general, the general who's pretty much Maximus from the original movie. Literally fought his wars and just wants to go home and spend time with his family, his wife, as he says, His wife is Lucilla, our main character's mom. Papa Pedro is this kid's stepdad, unofficially. And they are placed in a situation later in the movie where they are fighting in a gladiator pit together. And everything kind of gets squared up and settled away. They make peace, which is kind of weird because, again, this is my character who I wished had more to do. I wish Pedro Pascal had more to do. He, as usual, just comes on this, just shows up with this warmth that you immediately are just like, no, I get this dude. Totally root for this guy. So to see it go down the way it does is kind of disappointing because they take him out in the Colosseum there. And Rome is kind of sent into upheaval at this point in time. So this is where all the political mechanisms and the backstabbing, the action really starts moving in the third act of the movie, as it should. And it flows and it's paced well and it moves you well to that and everything. So get to the end. Surprise, surprise. Bad guys lose. There's some twist characters there that occur, Pedro Pascal is just kind of underutilized. Like when he's there, you love him and you just want to root for him and you're sympathetic to his character. But it's just where he fits in this story. He fits in a smaller role. And it makes sense why they do what they do, but it's just kind of a letdown. Denzel Washington ends up kind of flipping. It's like Training Day. Again, I've got another uncle who is constantly like, Denzel Washington just plays the same character all the time. And once you hear that and you think back to it all, you're like, yeah, this is true. Denzel Washington is pretty much always the same guy. Then I was thinking even further on that. I'm like, I think most actors are that, though. Every once in a while, you get people who kind of transform on screen. I just think a lot of other actors probably do a better job of picking out roles that at least kind of help them, I don't know, appear to have a little more diversity than they probably do. There are good actors out there. And Denzel, I think, is a good actor. It's just, he is kind of in this box in the sense of I just don't see a lot of dynamic range. He can play a warm character and he can play a monster and be awful. You know what I mean? I just don't know how big of a swing it is between those 2 points. Anyway, this doesn't need to be all about Denzel. For what it is and for what he is in this movie, he's perfectly fine. You know what I mean? There's one point in it where I'm like, oh, look, it's Denzel, but they kind of gave him a little bit of a Metro sprinkle there for a second. So that was interesting, I guess. I kind of wonder if he went home that day ooh, I did some serious acting today. I really stretched myself. As far as some of the battle sequences and action sequences go, they have these big fights in the Colosseum. Everything looks cool. There's a big, like I mentioned before, there's an opening battle. The opening battle looks great. As the ships were coming in on this initial siege, I thought it looked really good. And it did. That was where I kind of realized, all right, well, the effects in this movie hold up pretty well. This looks good. This could look really bad. In the recent last 5 or 6 years, there's a lot of versions of this that I'm sure could look really terrible. But it's good they took the time. paid artists appropriately and gave people enough time to make sure that they delivered something that looked solid. And they did. And it's better for it. For me, as soon as I saw a trailer and I saw that this kid was here, I was like, well, this is going to be Russell Crowe's son. This is Maximus's son. I wasn't sure how I was pretty sure how they were going to do it. Like, and it was like, it's going to be from the woman. It's going to be from the sister of the original movie. Like, I had no. So, like, for me, as that started unpeeling in the movie, none of it really surprised me. Like, I went in like just with like that was the default understanding of what I was going to go see. And honestly, on this review, I didn't read the IMDb synopsis because it straight up tells you that. And while maybe you're meant to know that going in, the movie's kind of made to reveal it in a way as it's meant to be like how about that, right? So, I don't know. And again, some of the people who I went with, I don't think they had seen any trailers. And they were like, yeah, I didn't go into this thinking that would be the case. So, again, it's not that it's bad. It's not poorly executed or anything. But if you could avoid the trailers, you would avoid that little bit. Then that might be a fun little reveal for you. Listening to the spoiler section of my podcast, though, yeah, worse than watching a trailer probably in most cases. Yeah, the Colosseum battles, like I said, look good. They're fun. I don't quite as feel the tension, as the original movie. I don't really know why, like if I had one minor gripe about the visuals in this movie, it's when they fill the Colosseum with water. The water is fine. The boats look fine. Again, all of that's fine. But there are sharks swimming around in there. I don't even care about the logistical argument about how great white sharks are ending up in this. I don't care about any of that. The sharks are way too fast. Like, not in their action sequences as they bite dudes who are getting tossed into the water, as a result of this battle. But, like, there's some wide shots, and you see the sharks swimming. And maybe sharks really are much faster than I know. Or, what I mean? Like, maybe I just don't give them enough credit. I mean, I'm sure sharks are fast, right, in the water. But I don't know. They just look kind of ridiculously fast for a few shots. Again, with all of that, that's probably the most memorable sequence of the movie. And it's a good one. And again, you kind of get to the end. There's other layers. There's other characters, and I'm not doing a very good job of giving you guys everything here. But I would say this because I would encourage you to watch this movie. Even with what I've said, there's good drama. There's good character drama there. There's pretty good writing. Yeah. It's worth a watch. It's definitely worth checking out. I don't know if there's anything else. I mean, look, it's not as good as the original for me. Like, Russell Crowe and Joaquin Phoenix in that original one, to me, just crush it. Joaquin Phoenix is proper awful. Russell Crowe just exudes this loyalty and nobility in his character in that original movie. And the leadership of his, the mates, the other gladiators, as my son called out to me when we were after watching this, he's like, well, it's just not the same. Like, this guy has, like, you see him lead in these leadership moments, in these gladiator moments, these gladiator scenes, but they don't quite do as good of a job as to establishing, like, well, why would any of these guys listen or follow this guy, right? And yeah, the first one just did everything a little better to me. So you can see Russell Crowe's, like, you get a good sense at the beginning of that first movie of the love and respect that he has for his leader at that point in time, and how well respected and loved he is amongst his peers. And that honor and leadership kind of bleed throughout the movie. And that's why he is a great leader. And it's just so good. And it's so strong. And it's just okay in the new one. Like, he's just, he's not, it's not that the acting is bad. It just isn't as, I don't know, you just don't buy that. Because again, when the movie starts, I mean, you know who your main character is going to be. But Pedro Pascal shows up and is pretty much Russell Crowe's character. And I will say that I'm kind of like, I like this guy. And then again, your main character, Lucius, he is hell-bent on this revenge against Pedro Pascal, who's just a general acting in war. And he takes this very personally. And again, Rome is painted poorly as the unrighteous ruling, empire. I get that, right? And again, by the end of the movie, he's made peace with it, but like, it's just not as personal of a motivation. Like, what happens to Maximus is very personal. A person he loves and reveres is murdered by Joaquin Phoenix. Maximus's family is murdered by Joaquin Phoenix, essentially by, sent in order, the order is given by him. And then he is sentenced to be executed by Joaquin Phoenix. So it just feels more like the vengeance that he's seeking feels more personal, and especially because the motivation of Joaquin Phoenix is power. And they're not only, and I get it, like, it's not just power. It was the fact that his dad just didn't really love him like he wanted to be loved. He was not loved and received by his father the way that he thought he should be. Anyway, because that's not quite as compelling, I just couldn't root as hard for this character, for Paul Mescal's Lucius, as I could Russell Crowe's Maximus. Russell Crowe's Maximus is unquestionably a better protagonist. Joaquin Phoenix is unquestionably a better antagonist. So this is kind of like watching The Force Awakens. It really is a lot like watching The Force Awakens, in the sense of, like, I don't mind Rey. Like, I think Rey's fine for those Star Wars movies. She's not Luke Skywalker. Like, I'm more compelled by Luke Skywalker. I'm more interested in Luke Skywalker. And Darth Vader's a better villain than Kylo Ren, right? I mean, I really love Kylo Ren. He's probably the best part of those 7, 8, 9s. But, he's not Darth Vader. So it's kind of the same thing. Like, so they're good. They're just not like, you do have a bar there that you can't completely dismiss when you make a movie called Gladiator 2, right? All of that said, I do think it's worth watching, guys. I might pick it up eventually on digital. I don't think I need to own a disc of this, you know what I mean? It's absolutely worth a watch, though. All right, guys, so that's all I've got. Did you see Gladiator 2? What did you think? Let me know in the comments below. As always, feel free to like and subscribe. Go and find me on all the socials by searching Stubs with Jason. Feel free to hit me in the comments, Messenger, or at stubswithjason@gmail.com with any recommendations or things to review. Love movies, music, whatever, right? So have a good one out there, and don't fight with family on Turkey Day. Stubs. All done.